Leo Ulf on BBC Radio Kent.
Yes, indeed, Leo with you here on BBC Radio Kent and looking back at what's been going on throughout the year. And back in June, there was a UK pilot programme where more than 70 UK companies and organisations started trialling a 4-day working week with no loss in pay for employees, something that had been talked about for a long time, as far as we know, and we're really intrigued to see how that went and what that means for the future of our working lives, really. So I'm joined, delighted to say, by Dr. Mansoor Soomro. He's the Senior Lecturer in Sustainability and International Business at Teesside University. Dr. Soomro, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about this then, because you've been doing some research into this, haven't you? Studying for the last couple of years past COVID about our working practices. So how did it all come about?
Right, fantastic. So as you know, recently the pilot for the 4-day working week in the UK concluded, and the results have been that over 2/3 of the companies, we talked about 70 companies who were part of the pilot. So those employees who were part of the trial, the feedback from them and the results are pretty positive. So they don't want to go back to the 5-day working week. We're talking about the companies that were part of the pilot.
Okay.
Also, we have seen this momentum across the globe, East and West both. So there are companies, independent trials of 4-day working week, as well as government and local council associated ones. And overall, it looks like positive results, and people are appreciative of.
So interesting. And I'm wondering with this, Dr. Soomro, it's because potentially during COVID and during lockdowns and people working from home, there seemed to be a kind of shift in the vernacular about how we would be looking to work in the future. So the idea of maybe having a kind of a half-day working, a half-week working week, half at home, half in the office. Whereas prior to that, it was just the expectation that we would do a 5-day week. Do you reckon that the pandemic and the way that people were starting to work and exist during that time was kind of conducive towards people's thinking for this 4-day working week?
Absolutely. I share the thought. It's what we look at the research and the data. It shows that post-COVID, post-pandemic, the results have been positive. It has given a push to this. So the reason being that we talked about remote work, working from home as near to an impossibility, and COVID proved that things are possible even if a manager cannot see an employee and work gets done. It's something that is fine. We need to go with it. We saw business models re-engineering, changing of business models, particularly in the lockdown. So yes, lockdown and the pandemic landscape, it has certainly given a push in terms of it. In addition to that, what we see is that the perspective of flexibility, that is the real win here. So we're talking about multiple ways of working now. So not just remote work, hybrid work. We're talking about 4-day working week. Also, we're going even further than this. Like if you look at following the news, Elon Musk says from Tesla that employees should be working 80 hours a week, which is contrary to what we are working 40 hours a week in general. Yeah. Whereas Jack Ma of Alibaba has been promoting this, that we need even a shorter week, and for 40 hours per week working is even too much. And he quoted in one of the media appearances that 12 hours a week is sufficient enough. Right. When we look at the perspective behind it, what we see is that it's more about independent work. It's more about collaborated working. It's more about flexibility. It's more about quality of life. It's more about autonomy. And with those sort of things, 4-day working week, to a great extent, is something that's positive.
So interesting, and what you mentioned there really struck a chord with me, which is both quality of life and quality of time. And I think if you're just looking at something in terms of quantity of time, you have to be somewhere, say, between 8 and 4 or 9 and 5. There may be a few wasted hours, but if you are doing less and you are in a better headspace or a better sort of geographical space to do it, you can work smarter, ergo being able to give yourself a little bit more time to yourself and spend some quality time. So it kind of makes sense, I think, in my mind. Whereabouts are we then after the trials? Is this the sort of thing that we could see becoming policy at any time soon, or is there still a long way to go before that's kind of activated?
Yeah, I think so. So I mean, we're closing 2022, and we're moving tomorrow to 2023, and I foresee that yes, a policy will be in place considering the trial and also the extensions of it. The next steps, as I see, would be that how would companies of varied nature, different business models, and different industries react to this. So the pilot that we went through was a diverse pool of companies. But what needs to be done now is it a fit for every industry, every sector? Is 4 days as good as is it good for a hotel? Is it good at the same time for a university? How about schools? How about banks? So what we need to see is that does it work equally well for every industry? That's number one challenge, that one of the research questions that we are working on. The second question that we are working on as we're moving into the new year is that when we talk about reducing the 1 day, so we're talking about 32 hours instead of 42. So 1 day off, so it's a 3-day weekend, and it's the same pay as for the less number of hours. So how will these hours be reduced? So what this requires is that companies, managers, and teams and departments, they have to sit down. Those who are moving forward with this, they have to sit down and look at how they will be managing the workload of 5 days now in 4 days. Does it mean as simple as does it mean as simple as less free time, less idle time at work, shorter breaks, eliminating needless tasks, right? So certainly it's productive, but it needs a bit of brainstorming and exchange of policies internally within the organizations as well.
It's so interesting. You're right. It's so far away from a one-size-fits-all that you don't even... It happens a lot when we talk about pilots and policy. You think of a kind of a utopian idea and you think, yeah, that'll work. And then you go, well, hang on a second. Well, as you said, teachers. Well, what if a teacher decides not to turn up for 1 day a week? That's not going to work, is it? So you're right. I think personally it's a great idea that we're at least talking about that now. It seems to work reasonably well. I think in Denmark, they've certainly been doing it for a while, haven't they? So great to have that conversation going. And thank you so much for letting us know about it, Dr. Soomro. That is really, really interesting. Well, hopefully we'll get you on again at some stage to see how things develop.
Lovely. Looking forward.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Happy New Year to you. Thank you so much.
Happy New Year to you and your listeners. Thank you so much. Bye.
Pleasure. There he is then. Dr. Mansoor Soomro, the Senior Lecturer in Sustainability and International Business at Teesside University, talking about a 4-day working week. And you know what?